Hi everyone, Paul here from FamilyWheels.ca with another car review for your growing family. And this week we're in a subcompact crossover that's a little bit late to the game. When we compare this to the likes of the Nissan Juke or the Honda HR-V, the Jeep Renegade or the Chevy Trax, it is sitting down at the table when it already seems like most of the seats have been taken. But Toyota says it stands out from that competition because it's fun to drive, it's got some bold design, which isn't going to be for everyone, we'll get to that in a little bit, and also some great standard safety features. Now the CHR isn't aimed at your typical family. Toyota says that their target demographic is what they call sensation seekers. Young people who are just getting into their careers, they're single or perhaps just in a relationship, but they certainly don't have a family quite yet. But I want to see if we can fit this square peg in a round hole and make this work for our family this week here on Family Wheels. Okay guys, so let's get right to it. The looks on the CHR. I know that it's subjective. I know that beauty is in the eye of the beholder, but everyone who's seen this thing this week has said to me, what is that car? My wife actually, when I got this thing and she got home after I'd picked it up, thought that I'd been in a car accident because of the way the back end on this thing looks. Now, some people might like it. Actually, this car was originally going to be rolled out by the Scion line of vehicles, which is kind of like a sub-brand from Toyota that bit the dust last year, but Toyota wanted to hold on to the CHR and roll it into its regular family of vehicles. And Scion had a bit more of creative license, let's say, when it came to design. So I'm not surprised that this thing has a little bit more flair than we'd see in a typical Toyota, where the body styling is generally a bit more subdued. But geez, I don't really know what's going on back there. And it's not a situation where fashion goes after function, because the back window is really tiny, so it's hard to see out of. It's on a really slanted angle, so it's not great for cargo, tall items, or a dog. We'll get to that in a bit. And we have one of the most honking blind spots that I've ever come across in any vehicle right over my right shoulder here. It's just massive, and I don't really see any reason why we need to have that. The back windows on this car are just tiny, so it means that you can't see well out of them as a driver, and my son, as well as a little 3.5-year-old, isn't able to see out the back window either, so he's constantly wondering what it is that I'm pointing out to him because he can't see anything. So that's the exterior looks, but once you hop inside here, the cockpit area on the CHR improves a bit. I actually quite like it. We've got soft touch surfaces all around. A leather wrapped steering wheel comes standard, so it feels nice in your hand. The dashboard has some nice stitching. The infotainment system is laid out nicely in front of you. Dual zone climate control comes standard. There is some kind of grosser plastic here around the gear shifter, but in general it's not bad here on the inside. Once I got in these seats, they call them sport seats, and they are on the firmer side, but it's strange because they're firm, yet they don't give you the support that you need when you go for a long drive. I've been out in this car for a couple of hours and my butt's starting to tire out a little bit. The foam just doesn't seem to give you the support that you'd be looking for a longer haul drive. Now, unfortunately, once you fire this thing up, that's when you start to encounter problems again, because no matter which trim you choose, and you only have two options, which are the XLE starting at about $24,500 up here in Canada, or the XLE Premium like we're in here right now, which is just over 26 grand. You get exactly the same powertrain on board. It's a 2-liter 4-cylinder engine putting out 144 horsepower coupled up to a continuously variable transmission. Now, traditionally, CVTs have been known to do a couple of good things, which is improve your fuel economy and require a little bit less maintenance a lot of the time, but they've also been known to kind of suck the power out of engines and be a little bit less fun to drive. Now, that's improved a lot over the last few years. In fact, there have been quite a few CVTs that I've driven around where I never would have guessed that they were CVTs. They feel like traditional automatics. This car, though, has one of the worst CVTs that I've ever had a chance to drive. It's got this incredibly bad drone to it. when you go to leave a stop sign or a stoplight in the urban environment where this thing has really been designed to spend most of its life, the revs go way high, and then it takes them a long time to come back down again. So you get this kind of roaring engine that just sounds like it's working way too hard. Then once you get it onto the highway, if you ever go to pass somebody on any kind of a hill at all, the engine just doesn't feel like it has enough power. I've driven other 2-liter 4-cylinder engines lately that have had pep, that have been kind of exciting. This is not one of them, despite the fact that Toyota said that they designed this thing to be fun to drive. So I'm on a bit of a quiet side road here and about to enter a highway, and I wanted to show you what I mean about the sound of this car from a stop under acceleration. So here we go. It takes quite a while to bring itself up to speed, and then the engine just roars. And it doesn't really bring those revs down like you would see in a regular automatic transmission for a long time, or even in many other CVTs that are out there now. And now I'm going to get myself out onto this section of highway and floor it under acceleration to get myself up to highway speed, and it's even more intense. Here we go. I think that it would be great if this car came with the option of a 6-speed manual gearbox, because you'd get a lot more out of this small 2-liter engine, and it would make this car a lot more interesting to drive as well, because this CVT is a serious Achilles heel of the CHR in my opinion. Now, the one thing that this power plant does deliver on is that fuel efficiency that I was talking about. I've averaged well below what Toyota suggests you should see on a mix of highway and city roads, which is about 8.5 liters per 100 kilometers. I've actually spent most of my time in the city this week, and I'm still averaging 7 liters per 100 kilometers on the nose, which for a car like this is really impressive. A big reason for that is because this vehicle is front-wheel drive. Now, the downside to that is the fact that you cannot, no matter which trim, get an all-wheel drive version of the CHR. Up here in Canada, if you are looking at a crossover, chances are you're going to want a crossover that has all-wheel drive on board. You compare this to the starting price of the Subaru Crosstrek, which has all-wheel drive standard on all of its trims, and that actually comes in $1,000 cheaper at its starting price than the CHR does. And that is something that I'm struggling with here in the CHR. It actually comes in a lot more expensive than many of its competitors. Now, I mentioned the fact that you don't have a lot of trim options in this car, and that base XLE trim does come with some pretty good kit on board as standard. You have a 7-inch touchscreen with a rear backup camera that's actually built into your rear view mirror, which is kind of cool and different. You have heated front seats, dual zone climate control, all those nice soft touch surfaces that I'm talking about, which do help make the cabin feel a little bit more premium. You also have the Toyota Safety Sense system as standard on all trims of the CHR, and that's something that Toyota's really pushing right now. They want all of their vehicles, no matter which trim, to give you things like adaptive cruise control and lane keep assist and forward collision mitigation braking, and that's awesome that you're getting that on all trims, but it comes in a fair bit more expensive than many of its competitors as a result. I mean, the Honda HR-V, which is probably the biggest competitor directly to the CHR, has a starting price $3,000 cheaper than this vehicle, and it has some pretty good standard equipment as well. And in the HR-V, you do have the option of getting all-wheel drive on the top of the line trim too, if you want it. Now, once you bump into this XLE premium trim, you're getting automatic folding side mirrors, you're getting larger 18-inch alloy wheels, push-button start, remote keyless entry where the key can just stay in your pocket and you open the door and it just senses that you've got the key on your body. And you're also getting blind spot monitoring, which you probably want given how nasty these blind spots are that I was talking about. But some of the things that I was kind of expecting on this premium trim that you're not getting include leather seats, power seats, a sunroof, Apple CarPlay, and Android Auto. Not an option here in the CHR no matter which trim. Neither is navigation, neither is satellite radio. You get a pretty basic infotainment system no matter what here on the CHR. We also don't have LED headlights. We have LED running lights on all trims, but the headlights are pretty old school and they're pretty dim for night driving. So yeah, we get some great standard safety features on board the CHR. Toyota's doing a really good job of that these days. And this does have a 5-star safety rating from NCAP, which is the European equivalent of the Insurance Institute for Highway Safety. They do a lot of the same sorts of tests, but the IIHS just hasn't tested the CHR yet. We also have that amazing Toyota reliability, which really does set it apart in many ways. But aside from that, a lot of both literally and figuratively blind spots in this vehicle when you compare it to so many of the competitors. Well, unfortunately, my issues with the CHR when it comes to the second row for families start before you ever even hop on board this thing. The first of which is the placement of this handle here for the second row. It might look cool and a little bit funky, but it's way too high to be functional because young kids like ours at 3.5 years old, there's no way that he's reaching this handle on his own. So we've had to help him a lot more than usual this week with this car. And then once you do get these doors open, they just don't swing open as wide as you see in many other vehicles, which means that if you've got a young kid, an infant who's still in one of those bucket style car seats, or even if your kids are getting a little bit older and you want to help them get into their car seats or buckle into their seatbelt, it's going to be a bit of a wrestling match to get in there and to actually help them. Once you do get on board, unfortunately, the issues continue. Here with this rear-facing car seat that I've flipped around, it's kind of an average size rear-facing car seat. We've had to use up every possible bit of front passenger legroom. The seat is rolled up as far as it'll go, which means that we have 25 inches from the back of the front seat cushion up to the glove box. And that doesn't even tell the whole story here, because there's this big bubble at the top of the glove box which your knees are bashing into. Even short adults are not going to be comfortable up here in that front passenger position when you do put a rear-facing car seat in place. Another issue that I have for family life in this car is that leather seats aren't an option regardless of trim, even in the XLE premium trim, and they're just so much easier to wipe down spills with if you do have kids make a mess back here. One thing that's a bit of a saving grace for the back seat on this car, I was expecting to be way more pinned in than I am as a 6'2" adult. I've actually got enough headroom here despite that sloping roof line that we have on board the CHR, and when my legroom at 6'2" with my driver's seat set the way I'd like it, there's no way I'm sitting back here. But if I did have a driver who's say 5'8", 5'10", I'd be able to sit in this second row quite comfortably. That was a surprise to me. One thing I was disappointed about with this car was that there's no sort of convertible functionality like we see in the Honda HR-V. That system of magic seats which flip up and give you a lot of different cargo configurations is really cool. It was taken right out of the Honda Fit. We've owned a Fit and we use that system constantly, and it's just not something that's available to you here in the CHR. Now, speaking of trunk space and usability and cargo capacity, the CHR has 538 liters of cargo space behind the second row, and that's certainly not as much as we see in the HR-V, which has 657 liters. Even the Subaru Crosstrek, the new one for 2018, has 588 liters behind the second row. We're testing that car next week, by the way, if you want to check that out. But you can see here that our standardized trunk test still does fit. It's a squeeze, but it fits. We have a stroller, which wasn't able to fit lengthwise. Instead, it has to fit widthwise. We also have a couple of bags of groceries, a diaper bag, a soccer ball, and a backpack, and it's all getting in there, but without much room to spare. If you want more room, one thing I like about the CHR is you can flip down those second row seats, and you do have a completely flat load floor, unlike a lot of the competition, once you flip those seats down. So that's handy. However, one issue that you're going to face with this car, if you're thinking about this vehicle with a dog, we've got a very sloped off back rear window, which again gives it sort of a sporty, weird, kind of different look, but it's not going to be as usable because it means that the dog's just not going to have the headroom that they need. So chances are your dog's going to wind up riding in the second row, which might not be the greatest thing because again, those cloth seats do tend to get dirty pretty easily. Well, if you're looking for something with a bold style statement, has great reliability, excellent standard safety features, and is a bit of a fuel sipper too for a crossover, then the CHR is certainly worth looking at. But if you want something that's fun to drive, you're not going to get that much of that out of this car. Also, it is fairly small. Toyota admits that this vehicle is a bit of a niche car. They sell way more RAV4s than they would ever sell CHRs. So if you are thinking to yourself that maybe someday, there's a chance that you might have a family, but you're looking at this vehicle, then I'd also take a RAV4 for a test drive in the Toyota family, and just to compare the two for yourself, because it's the kind of vehicle that you could grow into rather than out of. But I'd like to know what your thoughts are on the CHR. Please leave a comment below, subscribe while you're at it, and then next week, a vehicle I've had a lot of requests for, we're in the brand new 2018 Subaru Crosstrek, so make sure to check that out in about 7 days from now. Until then, have a great week.